we're just about done with our sheet metal part, but we need to add just a few more details. To start, we're going to hide the top part again, and we want to go to our sheet metal tab, and we want to add some sheet metal gussets. We're going to be going from this face to this face, and we're going to reduce the size. We're going to do a 1-inch inward offset, and under the profile dimensions, we'll use the indent depth of a 1/4 inch. Go ahead and say OK, and then we're going to mirror that. I'm going to go ahead and select the gusset, go to our feature tab, and we're going to mirror it first across the right plane. Then we're going to select the gusset and the mirror, and we're going to mirror that across the front plane. So that gives us a little bit more structure in the bottom corner. Even though we have the top restrained, we want to make sure that the bottom doesn't tend to flex or bow. We also want to add one more detail in here. We're going to do a sketch. We're going to select the front plane, and we're going to add a flat line, one up at an angle, back down, and another flat line. We're going to add a few dimensions here. This first line is going to be a 1/2 inch. The line on the far end is going to be 375. The top line is going to be a 1/2 inch, and we want to make sure that it's 0.375 up. And then we want to add an angle here of 130 degrees. We're going to select this line, Control select this line, and make them equal. Now we almost have a fully defined sketch, but we need to locate this. We're going to pull it off to the left just a bit, and we're going to dimension this endpoint to the origin, 0.75. Now we want to take this sketch to our sheet metal tab, and we're going to use one of the options in here to create a flange. So even though we've already made a base flange, we're going to take that sketch, we're going to extrude it out 1 inch, and we're going to use it to make a base flange. Now as we look at it, we want to make sure that it's going above the sheet metal right here. So we might have to change the direction and reverse it. So you see we're creating another sheet metal tab that we can use to space off some different components, and this allows us to have a complete solid bottom. Now of course you could do this a few different ways by making a cut and actually having it bend up inward or formed up inward. But if you don't have that capability, a lot of times you have to make these little brackets and you have to do things like weld them on. So from this point, we're going to go to our weldments tab. We're going to create a weldment, and then we're going to add a weld bead. And the weld path is going to go between this face and this face. Now we're simply going to weld it on both ends. And you'll notice that when I try to select a secondary face, it doesn't allow me to do that. But if I select weld path, I can specify a weld path. So let's go ahead and specify a weld between these two faces. We're going to add a new weld path, and we'll add one on the other side as well. So now we've effectively taken this new bent bracket and welded it to the bottom of the inside of our housing. Let's go ahead and show all 3 components. And now we've created a very simple sheet metal housing. Now, when you make a sheet metal part, you really want to make sure that it is actually manufacturable. So what we want to do for each of these parts is select them, right-click, and flatten them to make sure that we're not left with any components that physically cannot be made. Let's go up to our mirror 6, and let's flatten it and make sure that we don't have any issues here. Now it looks like everything here is good to go. We don't have any overlap sections. We can go back and exit flatten, and then we're going to show the external part. Flatten that, make sure that everything's okay here. Now once you have the flattened parts, that's really the end of this in terms of manufacturing. You're going to send the file off and you're going to have it manufactured. Depending on who you're specifically dealing with to manufacture these parts, you might have to flatten them, select the face, right-click, and export to DXF DWG. Now, one thing that Solidworks has added in the past couple versions is the available option to export all the parts from your cut list. One of the new available options in SOLIDWORKS 2015 and 16 is the available option to select your flat patterns folder and export. Now this allows you the option to export all of the available bodies in one sheet or multiple sheets. So it's a very handy option for you to take the flat pattern of individual parts and send them out all at one point in time. So usually what happens when you make a complex file like this is you're going to flatten all the parts and you're going to send them off. So it's one way that helps you out with SOLIDWORKS. If you have 5 parts, 10 parts, 20 parts all in one file, it can quickly and easily make the work of that just a little bit easier. So let's go ahead and save this. Again, we're going to do a save it as example 4. And congratulations, you've completed your basic sheet metal part.